Gookin,
Yes, I am here.
Wood,
Here.
English,
Here.
Miller,
Here.
McEvers,
Here.
Evans.
So we'll rise for our invocation. Is the pastor here tonight? Welcome.
Thanks for having me. If you feel comfortable, would you bow with me? Heavenly Father, first we thank you on behalf of all who are gathered here today, God, and I thank you for just your abundant blessings, God, for life itself, Lord, for our health, God, for the provisions for friendships here, God. God, we thank you for the ability to be involved in useful work, God, and for the honor of bearing these great responsibilities. Thanks as well for the freedom to embrace you and for the freedom to reject you. Thank you for loving us even so. God, and in the scriptures you say that citizens ought to obey government authorities since you've established those very authorities to promote peace and order and justice. Therefore, I pray for our mayor, for the various levels of city councils, and all that are gathered here today, and in particular for this assembled council. I'm asking that you would grant them, God, with wisdom to govern amid the conflicting interests and issues of our times, that you'd give them a sense of welfare and true needs of our people. God, that you would give them a desire for justice and righteousness, that you would give them the confidence to do what is good and fitting, and that you would give them personal peace in their lives and joy in their tasks. God, I pray for the agenda set before them tonight. God, please give them an assurance of what you would, God, of what you would benefit those who live and work in around Coeur d'Alene. God, and it's in your name we pray. Amen.
Lead us in the pledge, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Don't have any amendments to the agenda tonight. We will go on to, we have a proclamation, and April is Fair Housing Month, and I have a proclamation to read here, and then I have a gentleman, Mr. Chris Gray, that's going to accept it and say a few words. So I'll read this proclamation. Whereas on April 11th, 1968, President Lyndon Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act of 1968. The 1968 Act clarified the prohibition of discrimination regarding the sale, rental, and financing of housing based on race, religion, national origin, sex, and family status. Whereas it has been 53 years since the enactment of the 1968 Act, and the community of Coeur d'Alene continues to work together to uphold the fair housing law and the principle of equal opportunity on which it is based. And whereas equal opportunity housing can best be accomplished through leadership, example, education, and the mutual cooperation of all those affiliated with real estate industry and the public. Whereas the City of Coeur d'Alene supports the ongoing efforts of the many organizations, housing and service providers through continued education and outreach to affirmatively further fair housing. Now therefore, I, Steve Widmeyer, Mayor of the City of Coeur d'Alene, do hereby proclaim April 2021 as Fair Housing Month. Chris, come on up.
Mr. Mayor, thank you for your proclamation. On behalf of myself and fellow realtors in Coeur d'Alene, accept it. Fair housing practices are very important to our community and real estate business in its entirety. And Mr. Mayor and council members, thank you for this.
All right. Thank you very much for being here, Chris. So we'll move on to public comments. Anyone wishing to address the council shall have 3 minutes to do so on city business. Is there any member of the audience that would like to give public comment tonight? Renata, anyone online?
I have several attendees, but I do not have anybody waving their hand.
All right. We'll move on to announcements. Any member of the city council have an announcement? Kiki?
I have a few things. One is our library's open. There's some modifications for teen and children's rooms. That's not fully done, but folks have been really happy and doing well with the library. Side note, our children's librarian, Mandy Harris, has been accepted to do a virtual presentation at Oxford University on a paper that she authored on infant and toddler and preschooler adaptations in their play and engagement to online storytime settings. So that's kind of an interesting COVID silver lining item. I had another update I wanted to give you on the Growth Issues Coalition that I had made an announcement about. The group has now adopted a formal name, Regional Housing and Growth Issues Partnership. Troy asked me what I was going to call that, and I said probably the H&G team because it's shorter, but that's the official name. There are representatives from our regional cities, county, and Kootenai Metropolitan Planning Organization. The goals are to establish a resource group that can provide factual answers to community and officials' questions, to attempt to put forward solutions and a framework for implementation based on data-supported issues with inputs about what the community wants surrounding housing, provide education and pathways for what is possible and what is not, and work together on regional topics that affect all regarding housing and growth in Kootenai County. How it's going to be set up is there's a work group of planners from these entities that will be meeting. There'll also be an advisory group. It'll be all on Zoom. The advisory group invitations are some out and the rest going out. Probably 30 different organizations, everyone from Idaho Housing Coalition, Chambers of Commerce, CD Aid, Realtors Associations, school districts, health officials are all getting involved in the advisory group capacity. And those meetings will be recorded. Kootenai Metropolitan Planning Organization will be housing the links to those meetings so anyone can go review what was said and what the progress is. And we expect at this time it's going to probably morph and grow as more topics come up and as others are getting involved with that very, very important topic. So that's some of what I've been up to.
Right, great, thank you. Any other member of the council have anything tonight? I have a couple of pieces of business. I would like to appoint Angela Fox to the Child Care Commission and Louis Rumpler to the Planning Commission. Be looking for a motion for that.
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve Angela Fox to the Child Care Commission and Louis Rumpler to the Planning Commission. Any discussion on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Woody, you have the consent calendar.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move to approve the consent calendar as presented, including Resolution 21019.
Second?
Motion and a second to approve the consent calendar. Any further discussion? Renata, roll call, please.
Wood,
Yes.
Miller,
Aye.
McEvers,
Yes.
Gookin,
Yep.
English.
Yes.
Motion carried. We will move on now to other business, and we have an appeal hearing tonight, and this appeal hearing is for the Urban Forestry Committee's denial of a tree removal request at 2102 North 14th Street, in Coeur d'Alene. And I'd like to invite Mr. Bailey up to give his testimony. And Mr. Bailey, as part of this hearing, our city clerk, Renata, will swear you in.
Sorry. We raise your right hand and confirm or affirm the following. Do you swear that the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
May I begin? Thank you very much for hearing my appeal. I'm here to ask you for judgment on a 34-year-old tamarack pine that exists on a narrow ledge next to a hill on 14th Street, about 1,000 feet north of Hattie Avenue. This tree looks healthy, but is compromised. The root system, due to numerous water main breaks beside the tree, above and below, and we're talking 4 or 5. It breaks every 4 years and floods that area out. Numerous water main breaks and a sinkhole to the east side of it. It keeps sinking, I keep filling it, and it's very close to the tree, within about 20 feet. I need to do it again and add more earth to it. The hole is very close to the tree, and it is in a known flood zone. This is the flood zone that it exists in. It is part of the Nettleton Gulch drainage at the base of, that runs from the base of Best Hill to this hillside. This hill faces the lake and has no protection and is subject to higher than normal winds off the lake and being elevated up a slope. These are ponderosa pines, tend to do very well in areas where they have other ponderosa pines or other root systems joining together. This tree stands alone without any support of any other trees. It is exposed to both elevation, adding to its height, which makes it sit about the second story of my house. If it was to fall in this sinkhole, towards the sinkhole, it will completely devastate my home. It'll land across the roof, not on an angle, maybe fall off or do minor damage. It will do total damage. I have, in the area, we have of this hill, just adjacent from Best Hill, we've lost about 30% of the trees. All 4 houses across the street have been destroyed in the last winds. I don't want to be one of them. My neighbor doesn't want to be one of them. All the homes were severely damaged, just across the street. I'd like to be preventative about this, and before it happens. And I feel, my neighbors feel that I'm responsible for this. And I've contacted my insurance agency, who say that if you know of a situation and you don't do something about it, that's negligent. So I have really no choice but to follow through with this and ask for the appeal to be granted. I do have pictures and notes and of everything, but in light of the recent storms and all the damage within the city, I think that we need to be a little preventative on some of them when we can recognize what's happening here. Sinkhole, the curb that it's next to has raised an extra 2.5, 3 inches higher. It's forcing the curb up, trying to come over into the sinkhole. It's obvious by looking at the curb. With all the water main breaks within 20 feet, one above it, one just below it, and 4 or 5 more above it. That water, when it breaks, those water mains, it just floods that whole area, comes up over the curb. It has washed away a lot of material. They put it back in when they fix them. But what's under the ground there, I don't think can be seen, the damage. And with the curb coming up, cracked and broken, I think the only thing holding that curb together right now is the rebar within it. Structurally, it's a problem. This thing is 34 years old, at least 2 foot plus in diameter, big enough to hit the house across the street. It's very tall, and my house is only maybe 20, 25 feet from it. It's a danger, it's a threat, and I sleep under it every night. And I understand that the Forest Service gentleman is doing his job and everything, but I don't believe he would want that there, watching it in a windstorm, knowing that you're gonna go crawl in bed 30 feet away from it, and this thing's arcing severely. It's in a bad place. The ground that it's on next to the road is maybe 12 foot wide total before it just drops off. It doesn't have a base. There are no roots on the east side because of the sinkhole. I filled that hole in, there was no root. So it's void of root on one side. The other side that has roots growing under the road is pulling up the curb. It's doing damage to the city property also. I just would like to do the responsible thing.
So council questions for Mr. Bailey? Dan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Bailey, have you had an arborist other than the city arborist look at the tree?
Specialty Tree Service, Kennett Specialty Tree Service, we talked about it. He thought it should be removed simply because it's on a hillside without enough earth or support.
Mm-hmm.
He agreed with me and told me he would remove it. And I plan, if this is granted, to let Ken go ahead and do that.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Bailey?
He has already removed several trees off my property that were dangerous.
Any other questions? Kiki?
Did you say, Mr. Bailey, that you said 30% of some trees, were those your trees on your property?
No,
Or-
no, my property, I've safeguarded over the last 20 years and removed everything that was a threat. And the city arborist allowed me to remove a tree that was within this zone, but lower by 1,000 feet, that was compromised, and that one was approved. This one was asked for at the same time 20 years ago, and the gal that was in charge did not approve it. So this has been going on. 5 years later, we had another windstorm, and I again asked for it. This is actually my third time asking for its removal, and my first time at an appeal process.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Bailey. You'll have an opportunity to come back up.
Okay, thanks.
Now we will have Nick Goodwin, the city urban forestry coordinator. Renata, do you need to?
Yep, I think that was the last direction we should do. So, Nick, if you raise your right hand and affirm the following. Do you swear that the testimony you are about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Perfect. Hello, council. Pleasure to be in front of you again. So on January 19th of this year, I did meet with Mr. Bailey. He contacted me to inform me of a ponderosa pine in the right-of-way abutting his property that he viewed and his neighbors viewed to be hazardous. I met with Mr. Bailey. I informed him that I did an inspection of the tree. I did note some of the root issues that he had talked about, especially the erosion on the east side. I found this area to be used for parking, and to me, at the time, it appeared to be natural erosion on the hillside. I was not aware of any mainline breaks, and I have not been made aware of that, to be clear. From there, I informed Mr. Bailey that I would most likely have to bring this tree before the committee, which is stated in the code for us to do. That would be the Urban Forestry Committee, which I did bring before the committee at our February 19th meeting. The committee found that the tree does have significant deadwood, also has some gall rust infection. Both of these they found could be mitigated with pruning. They did investigate the root zone and found that there was some slight lifting on the curb side that was most likely from root infiltration to the curb, in their opinion. They also found that although there was erosion on the east side of the tree, of the root ball, this appeared to be from natural erosion, that there was healthy root growth on all other sides of the tree, and there also was downward root growth to where they could see. Of course, they didn't excavate the root ball, but they did view this. From there, they recommended pruning, especially pruning of the deadwood, to reduce the wind sail of the tree. Reducing wind sail would be to space the tree out, would do what's called a crown clean, in order to reduce the impact from wind, or attempt to reduce the impact from wind and allow wind to move more freely through the tree. So because of these reasons, and the committee found that the tree was in good health and condition, and was sympathetic to Mr. Bailey's concerns, but did not view it as enough reason to remove an otherwise healthy tree from the city right-of-way and urban forest. They did note the healthy growth of the tree. So I informed Mr. Bailey of this through a report from the Urban Forestry Committee and informed him of his right to appeal. From there, Mr. Bailey has appealed, and this is my report to the committee.
Council questions for Nick? Woody?
So Nick, this gentleman's concerns seem to be different than what you guys look at. Is that
So when the
fair to
committee,
say?
sorry, when a committee reviews the tree, they're really looking at the overall health and condition of the tree. If this tree was a hazard, if we viewed it to be more hazardous than, say, another tree of the same size, represented something that raised its risk level beyond low risk in comparison to other trees of the urban forest, would be approved for removal anytime. But they're really looking at the health condition of the tree, assessing that health and condition, and making the removal decision based off of that. If they would view a tree, or if I would view a tree as a high-risk tree of any kind, that would be usually an approval by me, if that answers your question.
So the tree is healthy,
Yes, sir.
in your guys' mind, and it's not as projected, the water problem that damages the lifting of the curb, you guys don't see it the way he sees it? Is that?
This is the opinion of the committee, which it's a group of, as you know, people with experience in different levels of tree care, whether that's forestry, and entomology. We have multiple people. We have the urban forester from the city from the North Idaho College. So they look at the tree and they make an opinion. Most arborists have opinion about tree health. Those do differ from arborist to arborist. And in the committee's opinion, they found this tree to be in good health and condition. And although there were some erosion on the east side, really found that to be the only issue that they could see with the tree. They did feel that all the concerns that Mr. Bailey had could be mitigated through pruning.
So you guys were aware of the hillside, the breaks in the water mains,
We were not aware of, I was not made aware or was not aware of any breaks in a water main. There was noted the damage, there is a lot of damage to the west of Mr. Bailey's home. There were several trees lost. That can increase the amount of wind that can hit this tree and increase the wind sail, which is why we recommended some wind sail crown cleaning, pruning to reduce that wind sail. The committee recommended that, excuse me.
So sinkholes don't bother you guys?
From what I saw was a parking area with some erosion. That wasn't a sinkhole to my knowledge. I didn't find any sinkholes at the property. It was just, to me, it was a hillside with some erosion on the east side.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just, trailing on that, Nick, are you an expert on sinkholes?
I am not an expert on sinkholes.
I'm not either, so I don't know. I have in my packet a picture that's really nice do you have this picture that you can share with the public?
If it's added to the agenda. It would not be on my phone.
Would be,
but
but
I
it's
could
not
plug it
here.
in.
So I'm looking at this picture, and thank you, Jeff, for holding that there. And what it looks like is this really shows how close the tree is to the street. Do you know what that distance is, the distance?
I do. I went out and measured it again today just to confirm. It is rough. It is a little bit, about 63 inches from the center of the bowl, that would be the trunk of the tree. Puts it just under 5 feet from the edge of the bowl to the curb line. Now, our city standard planting codes right now allow large-scale street trees, including ponderosa pine, to be planted in swales and planting areas that are at least 10 feet wide. So this tree would fit current city code plantings if it were planted today, which is how the committee looked at the planting space in relation to this tree.
So this tree is in the right-of-way, right?
Yes, sir.
And how wide is the right-of-way there?
The right-of-way is roughly 15 feet wide, 12 to 15 feet wide off of my estimation. It's fairly wide
I
right-of-way.
mean, it goes 15 feet into what he thinks is
I
his...
believe it's 12 feet in from the curb line to the edge of to where the tree
So
is.
his property line starts 12 feet in from the curb
Yes,
line?
sir. Yes. And that's fairly common throughout Coeur d'Alene. There are some large right-of-ways for either, that's done during plotting, as we all know, for either sidewalks or infrastructure that's put in. It wouldn't be 10 to 12 feet to accommodate the tree. I think it's mainly to accommodate a water line on the site.
So here's the question. If the right-of-way is really, if the tree is 5 feet in and the right-of-way is 12 feet in, then if the city ever wanted to take advantage of the right-of-way, we'd take out the tree.
If the city were ever to make a right-of-way improvement that made removal of the tree necessary, then yes.
So if we're going to widen 14th Street by 14 feet, we'd take out the tree.
Most possibly, yes.
And if given what you know about trees and sidewalks, if Mr. Bailey was unfortunate to fall victim to our code that says he has to put in a sidewalk,
Yes.
His sidewalk would probably take out the tree as well.
Yes, if there was a improvement at that property that required a sidewalk, it may result in a sidewalk removal. It depends on the project. When we have sidewalk replacements or installations in Coeur d'Alene, if we have existing trees, I meet with homeowners and project and contractors to see if there's a way to deviate around the tree and protect the tree during the sidewalk installation. Sometimes removal is necessary. and therefore the trees are removed.
So the argument from the city is, we need to save the tree because it's in our right-of-way, that in case we use it, we'll have to take out the tree anyway.
The request, the position of the Urban Forestry Committee is based off the removal request and the mention that this tree is hazardous. The committee did not find this tree to be of any other risk than any large-scale tree in the urban forest. So that is where the committee's decision came from. They felt that the concerns that they saw and as a group viewed as relevant to this tree could be mitigated through pruning. So that's where their recommendation came from.
I spoke to Race Tree Service. They're going to do some stuff. I put in an application. Thank you. And they told me that, Chris told me that there were more requests to remove trees in the city than he's ever seen. Is that true from your end as well?
I would say that that's accurate. And the threshold for these removals is relevant to in the committee's eyes, they've been relevant to the storms we've had.
Yeah. And I know, and I was
Yeah.
told there was, it's kind of an overreaction that people are taking out trees just because they're close to their house. But, and you can do whatever you want to on your property, but this tree is in a right-of-way
Yes, sir.
that I think the city's never going to use, because if the city ever used it, they'd have to take out the tree anyway. So would there be any argument to saying that we could have Mr. Bailey take out this tree and then require him to plant another tree in its place that maybe he's a little bit more comfortable with?
If any public tree that's removed in Coeur d'Alene requires replacement.
Okay.
So that if the council were to reverse the committee's decision through that removal process, he would be required to choose a approved street tree from the list to replace this tree with.
Okay, great, thank you. Christie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, Nick, I do think city staff and our Urban Forestry Committee does everything they can to keep us as Tree City USA. But with that, I'm curious, just your knowledge, how many people go to the expense of pruning or doing whatever, this crown cleaning of a ponderosa pine?
To frankly answer your question, probably not enough.
Okay.
I mean, I do feel if we're fortunate to have a cost share maintenance program here at the city of Coeur d'Alene, where we help pay for some of the cost of maintenance regarding these trees. If most of these trees were structurally pruned and pruned for, especially for wind sail, you can never guarantee that a tree is not going to fail in extreme conditions, but it would really help if we continued to, the better we maintain our trees, the less chance that they're going to fail.
And I guess my impression is this, if he were to choose to do this pruning and cleaning, this would be out of his own pocket. This wouldn't be a city expense.
Well, so as from financial analysis perspective, all public trees in the city of Coeur d'Alene, aside from those in parks and of course city maintained properties like beautification areas, the responsibility is that of the homeowner or controller is named in the code. So it would be his financial responsibility to, whether the tree were to move or he were to follow the committee's recommendation to prune it. We do have, as I mentioned, the cost share maintenance program to help with the costs associated with that. Of course, it doesn't cover the entire cost.
I've always found it interesting that the trees in the city right away that we control and decide what will happen with, and again, I think staff does a fantastic job, but the expense falls back on the homeowner, which is very interesting. For me, I just think that if you're going to go to that kind of expense for all that pruning, just remove the tree. There's a lot of people getting sleepless nights over a ponderosa pine, and that's just my thought.
Kiki?
Thanks. Nick, I'm assuming from the picture that this wasn't a tree that the city or the homeowner or anyone actually planted. It was a volunteer, probably sapling, that just got bigger over time, or?
I don't have any notes in my inventory program that indicates it was planted, but my guess is that it's probably a volunteer.
Okay. So, and then my other thing is, and maybe this is a question for our staff, is what is the city's legal position if we go through a hearing and deny removal of a tree, and then there's some harm that comes to that property owner that we've already been notified could occur?
Legal may be better to answer that question, but I have consulted with them many times on that exact question, because it is a concern that the committee takes into consideration when they make these removal request decisions. But basically, from my understanding from the city's perspective, is that they are trusting the Urban Forestry Committee with the responsibility to make these assessments regarding a tree's health and condition. And in an event that there was an extreme enough condition, like we've seen in January, where a tree fails, if the Urban Forestry Committee has reviewed that, then that's a risk, according to city attorney when I spoke to, that if the tree is deemed to be in good enough health and condition to retain by the Urban Forestry Committee, that would be a risk the city is willing to accept to retain those trees in the public right of way for the benefit of the public and the urban forest.
Mike, do you have something to add?
Yeah, just add on to that, it would, as I think the applicant mentioned, negligence would be a measure of, was our decision, we exercise ordinary care based on the facts presented to us? If it supports what the Urban Forestry Commission has said, and ultimately a jury or a judge had to evaluate that, yes, that was appropriate, then we wouldn't have any liability. On the other hand, if they looked at it and said, no, exercise of ordinary care by an ordinary person, you probably would have removed the tree. If it falls and causes damage, then we would potentially have some liability.
Yeah.
Well, just, I think, we don't overturn one of these things lightly and shouldn't, but it just looks like I'm, hearing multiple factors that, this isn't like, oh, gee, it's really good, and, we've had them where they just, they got bothered by, the tree shedding or something, but this certainly looks like a risk, and, I drove by there, and, yeah, there's trees, up the street from it, and so, yeah, I'm comfortable with, overriding on this one.
Any other questions for Nick? Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
Mr. Bailey, I can't see you around the podium there, but if you had anything to add, you're certainly welcome to.
I'm sorry, sir, I couldn't hear you.
If you have anything to add at the end of this, you're certainly.
Yes, sir, I would like to add something very important. The trees that destroyed the 4 houses across the street from me fell from an alley that goes unmaintained because it's part of this hill. So they don't use it for garbage trucks or service or whatever. It is an alley, and those trees that fell were healthy, good trees that fell from the city's alleyway and destroyed those houses. They should have been caught before it happened. I'm trying to do the same thing. Let's catch one before it happens and save a whole lot of damage.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bailey.
Thank you.
So we heard the testimony here, and we'd be looking for council action. Christie, you seem to be inclined to possibly make a motion.
I do, Mr. Mayor. I want city staff and our Urban Forestry Committee to understand that I do appreciate the work they do. Certainly not wanting to question their integrity, but I do think we've have enough presented tonight to help us make a decision on this, and I would make a motion to reverse the decision of the Urban Forestry Committee that denied a tree removal request at 2102 North 14th Street by Mr. Bailey, and I would direct staff to prepare the findings in order.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion on that? Dan?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I was just going to add that we did this before. If you remember, 3-4 years ago, there was a tree on Garden. It was the same type of thing. It was a nice, healthy tree, but it was leaning over the house. And so we told the guy we reversed the decision, and we said to the homeowner, you can take out the tree, but you got to plant another one there. So we have done this before. I think, that's the way the system works. It allows us to take more of a passionate view about it as opposed to a hardcore scientific view that the committee has. So I do respect their decision, but thank you for appealing it.
Okay. Any other further discussion? Roll call, please, Renata.
McEvers?
Yes.
Gookin?
Yep.
English?
Yes.
Wood?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you. Move on to resolution number 21-020. It's approval of a contract with TML Construction, Inc. for the 2021 compost biosolids hopper retrofit project at the compost facility. Mike Becker.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council. It's a beautiful day in Coeur d'Alene, and where's my video? Okay. So, tonight, before our council, we have a decision point, and the wastewater department would like to thank you for the opportunity to present our findings on the bid acceptance for our biosolids hopper project. So where is this project? It's presently located at the very north end of Julia Street at our compost facility. The nearest residence is approximately 300 feet away. So what is the project for? Project is for the production of compost at our early stages. As shown right here, we take our anaerobic digested biosolids and mix it with new and used recycled wood chips to produce a Class A compost. The biosolids hopper is this device, and we use a conveyor system to actually do the mixing for us. Our existing old hopper and conveyor system, well, it has exceeded its useful life. It's undersized, especially now that we have a fully operational TMF filtration system at the plant, so we're seeing more biosolids being produced at the treatment plant, hence more compost. Presently, this system is undersized. It also presents interruptions in the feed operations as the biosolids tend to stick or bridge within the hopper bottom right here and doesn't lower into the conveyor. As you can see, it presents a problem because it's not easily accessible by operators, and so they have to come in on this backside and reach up in there to help clear out some of those biosolids that are sticking. This presents both a time-consuming problem as well as a potential safety issue. So this is what we're looking at for our replacement. The biosolids is going to be upsized, it's going to be larger, and instead of a two auger screw conveyor system, we're going with 4, and they'll be set up with VFDs. That's variable frequency drive, so we can adjust the speed on this. So last year we went out for a professional services agreement that was approved, and we budgeted accordingly based on that initial estimate. And the city went out to bid on February 26th. We only received one bid, and one of the reasons why we received one bid is this has specialized equipment that requires specialized manufacturing. It also is, we reached out to our local contractors to do the work first. So what we found is we had bids come in at $365,200. The engineer's estimate was $402. And so with that, we would just like to go ahead and conclude that staff's recommendation is to recommend awarding the contract to TML Construction in the amount of $365,200. And lastly, on a sidebar, I'd like to pitch that this weekend is the wastewater utilities free compost giveaway. We encourage the public to come out and pick up some Coeur d'Alene for their gardens, and it's free. We just ask that you don't bring professional loading equipment and dump trucks out. So with that, I'll entertain any questions.
Questions for Mike? Woody?
So Mike, this is a retrofit, it's not new. Is that the impression I got?
It is a retrofit because we're taking the same concept, only we're improving on it. It also requires us to do some structural modifications to the building. And so that's why we had to bring in a professional services agreement with a local engineer to help us out in that area. Ordinarily, this would be an equipment replacement.
That's what I thought. I mean, you're solids, you're more solids because people are using less water, blah, blah, blah. But the unit itself is the same size, you're adding two more, what do you call them? The drill things that keep them moving, not sticking, right?
Right, they're screw augers, so basically they spin, and as they spin, they help pull the biosolids and then drop them into this another screw auger that mixes it with the wood chips.
Okay. So you're just making it move more efficiently, same size, same unit, just upgrade it.
Sure, we'll have the ability to adjust the speeds, so as production increases, we can speed it up or slow it down as needed. Did I answer your question?
I think so. So I was stuck on sticky.
Sticky?
Sticky. Everybody wants that job,
So
little sticky.
I could get real graphic, but I'm sure council does not want to hear that, nor does the public.
You're right there.
Thank you, Mike.
Any other questions, Dan?
Let's see, the giveaway this weekend, is it both days, or what are the hours?
We start on Friday and it goes all weekend long until we run out of compost. We won't run out of compost.
Start during the day Friday?
Pardon?
You say, it'll start during the day on Friday?
Yes. Last year, we actually had it on Saturday, and our crews operate Monday through Friday, but we will have presence there over the weekend. They loaded it out on a Friday, and people just started coming up and showing up on Friday, so we encourage
I've
them.
already been detailed to pick up a pickup load, so I'll be there.
So snow shovels work good, but, soda buckets and little sacks. And it's free. This is the public's product.
Yeah. Anything else, Woody?
I would like to make a motion
Okay.
to approve Resolution 21020, approving the contract with TML Construction for a 2021 compost biosolids hopper retrofit project at the compost facility.
We have a motion. We have a motion and second by Dan English. Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Renata.
Coogan?
Aye.
English?
Yes,
Wood?
Yes.
Miller?
Aye.
McEvers?
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you, Mike. Resolution number 21-021, approval of an agreement with School District 271 for school resource officers for a 2-year term. Chief White.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is pretty straightforward. We've had a contract with the School District 271 now for years for the services of our school resource officers. This is just renewal of that contract. It's pretty much identical to the one you guys approved last time. It allows for 67% of 9 months' salary and benefits for the 8 officers who were assigned to School District 271 in exchange for their school resource officer services during the regular school year.
Right. And then they transition, Chief, from school resource officer, you have a special program for the summertime that they transition into?
Yes, sir. We use them just as regular officers during the summer. However, we typically assign them to the downtown patrol area to assist with the extra influx of visitors that we get during that time.
Right, yeah. All right, questions for Chief on that?
Just a comment, Mr. Mayor, it might seem a little biased, but what an excellent program that is, isn't it?
It is an amazing program. We have a great relationship with 271, and really the benefits are amazing. Every now and then we get to see just some of the photos of the kids' faces when they're interacting with the school resource officers, and it goes beyond that too, because when the school resource officers have that good relationship with the students and the faculty and that sort of thing, then oftentimes the officers who are assigned to those areas will stop by during lunch or after school and play with the kids or whatever. So it's really great for our community and for our department.
Freaking awesome. And I would just note for the record that The board chair whose signature is on the contract, I was her SRO. Maybe that, don't do the math on that. But weird how that works.
All right, any other questions for Chief? So we're looking for council action.
Mr. Mayor, I would make a motion to approve resolution number 21-021, approving an agreement with School District 271 for school resource officers in a 2-year term.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
English,
Yes.
Wood,
Yes.
Miller,
Aye.
McEvers,
Yes.
Gookin.
Affirmative.
Motion carried. Thank you, Chief. Move on to resolution number 21-022, award of a bid and approval of an agreement with TML Construction, Inc. for the Hutter Well facility with Terry Pickle. Welcome, Terry.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for allowing me to come before you tonight. Actually, with some good news. I was kind of dreading this bid. Our engineering firm had been telling us that this is going to be really high, and it came in under budget. Amazed me, because things have been going sky high with materials and labor lately, so I'm very pleased to announce that TML Construction, seems like they're getting a lot of work, city work here, came in with the low bid of $1,038,400, and I had a budget of $1.2 million. Our engineering firm kept telling us it was going to be between 1.5 and 1.9 million, so we were pleasantly surprised. And we did review all of those bids, and they all came in accurate. Everything was there, nothing was missed, so we feel comfortable with what came about. As you recall, we got this property from the trails as part of the subdivision process. We have drilled the well, tested it, everything was good. We're moving on with building the production portion of it. The construction of the transmission main has been completed. They still have a little bit of cleanup and hydro seeding, but it's all done, laid in there, connected to the the industrial standpipe with 18-inch C900. We've gone through the design and bid process, came in with the bids for vertical turbine shaft pump. We did, during the bid process, or during the design process, we did downsize the building a little bit, and we simplified it. Typically, we've had 2 rooms in a pump house, so with the new chlorine generators, we don't need that, so we eliminated it in a separate room and simplified the access, made it fit the property. We've kind of reworked the buildings a little bit to get a better design that works better for us. You can kind of see the side view of it, what the pump and everything will look like. So we're asking council to please award the bid, the lowest responsive bid, and authorize a contract with TML Enterprise, or TML Construction, in the amount of $1,038,400.
Right. Questions for Terry? Woody?
Just a couple. Terry, can you just kind of give us an oversight of when we have to build a new well, when you have to poke a new hole?
Yep.
$1 million, $2 million?
By the time it's all said and done here, we'll be about $1.4 million into it.
Okay.
That's
And
about the
then-
average cost of a new well, and that's expensive infrastructure for just a few months of the year. But we've got to meet our peak demand. That's one of the things we've been talking about with water conservation, is some way to reduce that peak demand. We've gone through the Spokane River Forum, we've gone to council, we've gone to other places to try and emphasize that. So, but it is an expensive process. But
So
we
when
have
this-
to meet our peak demand with our largest pump out of service per DEQ standards.
Right. So what's our peak right now? What can we, when this well is done, what can we pump?
We can pump 49 million gallons a day. Right now, we can do 44. Our highest point yet so far has been 40.6 for demand.
Was that a hot day?
That was a hot day about 3 years ago.
Really?
Typically, we see 38, 39 million gallons during the day in the
It
summertime.
seemed like I can remember when it was 30 million.
It's
Right.
amazing how fast it increases.
And it's mostly irrigation,
Yep.
obviously.
That's our largest user.
How many wells do we run in the summer peak?
At peak day, we'll be running all 10 wells. This will make 11.
10 wells, 11. And how many are running in February?
3.
3.
Yeah. So 70% of our infrastructure is for 5 to 6 months of the year.
I think that's important for us to remember,
Yeah.
you know. Thank you.
Any other questions for Terry? Dan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Terry, $1 million for the building, I mean, how much a square foot is that?
I have calculated down to the square foot. We're 250,000 just into the pump alone.
So I was gonna ask,
Yes,
where
it's
is the
pump,
big expense
generator, everything for the whole site.
Okay,
It's
so
not
that's-
just the building, it's the whole entire site turnkey.
So that big motor that sits on top
Yep.
of the pump, that's $250,000?
Yeah, that big motor and all that goes down below ground, that's $250,000 alone.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then
Then
there's
there's generators, 160,000.
Mm-hmm.
The MCC panels, roughly about 60,000. The chlorine units, another 65,000. So there's a lot of expensive equipment, and there's not just the building alone. It's the entire site finished. There's storm drains that have to put in so that when the pumps start and stop, water goes into the waste channels to keep from creating water hammer, and we don't get dirty water when we first start up, just to protect everybody.
Yeah, so we're not talking granite countertops, that kind of thing?
No, this is bare bones.
Thank you.
Yep.
Stained glass windows,
Any other questions for Terry? If there aren't any questions, we'll be looking for council action.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move to approve Resolution 21022, award bid and approval of the agreement with TML Construction for the Hutter Well facility.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Renata.
Wood?
Yes.
Miller?
Aye.
McEvers?
Yes.
Gookin?
Yep.
English?
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you,
Thank
Terry. Appreciate it. Move on to work from the General Services and Public Works Committee. First item of business, resolution number 21-023, approve a contract with Poe Asphalt Paving, Inc. for the 2021 chip seal project. City Engineer Chris Bosley. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council. Got an exciting presentation about road maintenance today. So, as you know, over the last few years, we have been choosing to chip seal our roads because they are quite a bit, our money goes quite a bit further than an overlay program. We get about 4 times as many miles chip sealed as we could with an overlay. Not all streets are appropriate for it, and if the road has failed too far, then chip seal just doesn't hold it together. So this year, we are looking to do a couple of our major arterials. We've got Ramsey from Hanley Avenue to Prairie Avenue, because south of there, the road, the asphalt damage is significant enough that we're going to have to put in some more repairs to that area. And then Government Way from I-90 all the way up to Prairie Avenue as well. Considering that our city limits stop at Wilbur Avenue, we are going to bring back an agreement with you, with Hayden and Lakes Highway District, who control Government Way from Wilbur to Prairie. They each share a portion of that. The reason why we decided to do all the way up there was because we all partnered together on the Government Way project that was put in a couple years ago. During that project, there was an asphalt seam that wasn't very desirable by any of the entities involved with the project, but it met ITD's specs, so there was no way that we could actually reject the asphalt there. So as a group, we decided, well, we'll just try to chip seal that as soon as we can. And so this year, we've chosen to do that. And we will be coming back to you with an agreement for their monetary contribution to that. I just wanted to throw in some pictures here to show you. This was a picture I took on Hanley Avenue a couple years ago. You can see the, I got a mouse right here. This is the oil truck spraying down the oil, and then the chip spreader following right behind it, dropping the chips on it, and then there's a rubber-tired roller right here, and after a few passes with the rubber-tired roller, it's all set for traffic to return to the surface again.
This doesn't really capture the smell, does it?
It does not, no. And I also, just out of curiosity, I took these photos a couple years ago because some people don't like how rough a chip seal could be. So I took a couple photos. This one here on the left is actually the street in front of my house. This is an old asphalt surface, and over the years it's deteriorated to the point where the aggregate is really exposed on it. The asphalt's actually in pretty good shape, but you can see the aggregate. Well, here off to the right is a chip seal product that went down a few years ago, and you can see they're pretty similar in texture. And then this was, sorry for the surprise here, this was not in your council packet, but I thought that this would be a good opportunity to talk to people about what to expect when they're out there. And so I just threw some tips to drivers in there. The first one I've got is that it's a multi-stage process. That means that when they come through and they put these chips down, that's not going to be the last you see of them. They're going to go away for a while, and then they'll come back later after the chips are really bedded in there and put the fog seal on top of it. And then they'll go away for a while again, and then a few days to a few weeks later, we may be back restriping the road. So there's time required between all those stages, so we can't just get in there, get it done, and get back out again. It would be great for all people out there driving to follow traffic control directions because it's safer for the drivers and for the workers out there. And note that if a traffic signal is not operational, which sometimes we have to shut them off while they're working in the intersection, that needs to be treated as a stop sign. We've had issues during chip seal projects where we shut off a signal and people just fly through the signalized intersection thinking that they don't have to stop. Don't drive through the fresh oil. That can get all over your vehicle and stick to the sides, and it's really hard to get off there. And then please expect that there are going to be loose rock chips until the final sweeping is done, and then possibly some after that as well. So when you're driving through those sites, please reduce your speeds through the construction zone, increase your following distance to the car in front of you so that you don't get a rock chip through the windshield. And motorcycles and bicycles really need to use extra caution because the friction on the surface isn't there that they're used to. And then, like I said earlier, expect several days before the final striping is complete because we really need that oil set in and everything and be ready for us to apply the paint. So with that, I would ask that you approve the contract with Poe Asphalt Paving for our 2021 chip seal contract. They were the low bid in our competitive bid process.
Thank you, Chris. Council questions?
Mr.
Christie.
Mayor, thank you. Chris, you might have already stated this when you started. If so, I apologize. This is a strategic plan when you do your chip sealing. It's just not you throw a dart every year about where it should go. Can you describe that a little bit?
So we have a 5-year chip seal plan put together right now, but it's not exactly set. Because we do have some flexibility, like for instance, Eastside Highway District is looking at chip sealing Coeur d'Alene Lake Drive next year. So now we're thinking, well, maybe we should bump that up to do it at the same time as them, so that we do allow for some flexibility there. But we have a street rating program where we have one of our inspectors who goes out and rates all the streets to determine the competency of each of those streets and give it a value for how good of shape it's in. And then we can use that information to determine what our priorities would be.
Excellent, thank you.
Dan?
When does the major restriping happen for the roads around?
For the year. Our general restriping, well, normally we'd be starting about now, but we're running into a little bit of problem with securing paint. So there are some major shortages in the country of PVC for making pipes, asphalt for making roads, and for paint to put the stripes down on the roads. And a lot of it, or all of it possibly, is due to the winter that Texas actually experienced this year. and the damage that was done down there. So we have our order in for paint. We're just waiting to see when we can get it, so I couldn't tell you when that will be.
Okay.
Any other questions for Chris? If not, we'd be looking for council action.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move to approve Resolution 21023, approving the contract for pole asphalt paving for the 2021 chip seal project.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Miller,
Aye.
McEvers,
Yes.
Coogan,
Yeah.
English,
Yes.
Wood.
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it. Next is Council Bill number 21-1005, approval of amendments to Municipal Code, Chapter 2.82, Pedestrian and Bicycle Advisory Committee. And Renata, we have Monty McCauley on Zoom.
Good evening, Mayor.
Yes,
Council.
Monty is
Can you hear
there.
me
Monty,
okay?
you may share your screen.
All right. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you now.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So tonight I'm here to talk to you about some proposed changes to the city code.
Just a second here, Monty. Can you, the screen's a little messed up there. Renata is going to fix it for us. When will we be done with this Zoom business?
I'm ready.
There we go.
Okay, Monty, you're on.
All right. So I'm here tonight to talk to you about some proposed changes to the ped bike city code, or the city code regarding the ped bike committee. For about a year now, the committee has been discussing adopting formal bylaws just to give new committee members some better guidance as to know what their job is, what the responsibilities are for the committee in regards to making recommendations to city council. During that time, we came up with some changes to the committee itself. And so the bylaws will be adopted internally amongst the committee, but a few changes to the code came along with that. And the changes that we decided on, or they decided on, were three different things. The first item was to change the number of members, 15 members, changing that to a range, a minimum of 8 members to a maximum of 12 members. Having 15 members, the committee felt was kind of unwieldy and difficult to facilitate a discussion, and it was difficult to meet forums, especially in the summertime. So the second change that they're asking for is changing some of the representatives, because each member of the committee represents a different portion of the public. So they want to change. They have 5 general public representatives right now, and they'd like to remove 3 of those and then change 1 to a water access community representative, as we're going to be adopting water trails pretty soon, adding them to our trail system in the city. They want to change the name of the retired community representative to an older adult representative to ensure that they're representing older adults that may have mobility difficulties and not just a young person that retired at 30 years old. So the final change, let's see, actually there wasn't the final change, that was prior meeting we had, and we decided that subcommittees and ad hoc committees would be just internal into our adoption of bylaws. So tonight we're asking the council if they would approve those changes, the changes of the number of members and the names of certain representatives in that committee.
Okay, questions of council of Monty from council. Any questions? Everyone was riveted by that.
Mr. Mayor, I believe that the committee can form their own bylaws, and they've spent a lot of time on it, done a good job. So I would make a motion to, let me find it.
Got to dispense, we'll dispense with the rules.
Okay, thank you. I'd make a motion to dispense with the rules. I still can't find it. Kiki, maybe you can make the motion.
I can't, my battery died.
Okay, I found it. I'll make a motion to dispense with the rule and read Council Bill number 21-1005 once by title only.
Second.
Motion and a second to suspend rules. Any discussion on that? Roll call, please.
Miller,
Aye.
McEvers,
Yes.
Gookin,
Yeah.
English,
Yes.
Wood.
Yes.
That motion is carried. Renata, would you read the title, please?
Council Bill 21-1005, an ordinance providing for the amendment of Section 2.82.010A of the Coeur d'Alene Municipal Code, providing for the repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, providing for the publication of a summary of the ordinance, and providing for an effective date hereof.
Okay, and then we have one final piece of business on that.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to adopt Council Bill number 21-1005.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on that? Roll call, please.
Miller,
Aye.
McEvers,
Yes.
Gookin,
Yes.
English,
Yes.
Wood.
Yes.
Motion carried. Thank you, Monty, and
Thank
the
you.
committee. So we will get to our final piece of business tonight. We have resolution number 21-024, approve amendments to the city's food and/or alcoholic beverage service areas on the public sidewalk policy. Renata, will you be going back and forth between here and there?
Yeah, I can do multitasking,
Okay.
but not that much.
Okay, Renata, you're up.
Okay, I'm here to present some proposed amendments to the outdoor seating policy. And this is what we're referring to as our 2021 review. I think maybe I sped through it a little bit at General Services, so I'm going to take a little bit of time and go over a few more things with you tonight. So just as a reminder, this is a policy that's been on the books since 2006. And the purpose statement that's included in that policy that the council adopted at that time and has carried forward was to allow for use of the city right-of-way, which is mostly our sidewalk areas, for the purposes of the restaurants or eating establishments that may also have alcoholic beverage licenses. So there's some little bit of differences for those that have alcohol and those that don't, which include chains and stanchions and things like that. But this policy guides all of that. When we talk about the eating establishments, what's a restaurant, what qualifies as food, we utilize the definitions that are already existing within our municipal code. So we have what is a full-service one and which is a limited-service one. I believe these kind of stem from the Idaho code, so there's not a lot of differences between the two. What we found is the full-service one does require a type 1 commercial hood in the kitchen, but both do require that there's a commercial kitchen at the establishment. The limited services one also has a strange little section of the code that says that they have to stay open till at least 9 p.m. I'm not sure why, but those are what we use as guidance. So some of the history of this code development was through the years, there was dialogue with some of the business owners. There were some times when citizens came forward and had issues with some of the things that were going on in the city right-of-way, like the use of profanity, the dirtiness, the sidewalks weren't getting cleaned very well when food was spilled. So some of these amendments happened because of those things over the years. We've had differences in how long the policy should be open. So it used to be that it was April 1, they could come in and get their permits, and it would end October 15th. But in consultation with the business owners, they've requested it to go from March 17th till October 31st. So the council has approved those, and we have had a good working relationships with those organizations over the years. We've kind of been back and forth on whether the outdoor seating should end at 10 p.m. or 11 p.m., so currently it is 11 p.m. As you can see from this list, A lot of the amendments that we're kind of talking about currently is that section regarding termination and suspension was added in 2012. And that was, from what I understand, reading the old council meeting minutes, some of the issues with the citizens feeling uncomfortable down there, and the noise, and some of the neighborhood complaining about the noise occurring. And again, some of the stuff we're happening right now with the over-service, things like that. So at that time, staff recommended some additional segments to allow for a little more control of our city sidewalks. So currently, the application process includes that they have to turn in a little map, a site plan, so to say, of their area that they're going to be using, where the stanchions are going to be located, and proof of food service, and the payment of all the fees. So what we found as we were reviewing the code recently is there was a section entitled denials, but there was really no language in there that would allow us to deny an application, only that they didn't qualify. So we were recommending that the denials be based on the same reason as a suspension would be. But since we looked at it, that's always the time where staff and legal get together and say, since we're opening up Pandora's box, let's look at how this thing reads. And it really was clear. There were additions and subtractions that added over the years that maybe weren't quite grammatically correct, that were maybe in placements throughout the policy that really didn't make sense. So some of the highlights of things we did were to reorganize some of the language so they go together in the right segments of, you know, here's what your qualifications are, here's what you need to provide us. And with some segment regarding gas appliances that was off by itself, but it really should have been added in this list of additional conditions. So those are some of the things you'll see in what was presented tonight. We had a reference to a vision triangle, which most of you know as driving. It's that 30 feet around an intersection that needs to remain unobstructed. However, in this code, it referenced something in the urban forestry code that was no plantings or trees within a 30 feet of an intersection. It didn't really make sense, so we cleaned that up and actually spelled out what a vision triangle is. We have a section in there that talked about removal of glass bottles. It just really didn't grammatically read right, and so we did some re-terminology in there. And again, we just replaced the term revocation with suspension, because as you read the paragraph, it really was talking about a suspension of the license for a short period of time or a long period of time, not really a revocation. And of course, we added in a little bit more information that clarified if a person was to receive a suspension and appeal to City Council, that suspension would be stayed until they had their hearing before Council. That was not clear previously.
So just to clarify on that, excuse me, Mr. Mayor, does that mean that if you suspend it and they want to appeal it, they still can keep the outdoor seating open?
Yes.
Okay.
Until we have the hearing before Council.
All right.
There was a section in there that referred to violation of a patron being aggressive, using a weapon, or having a civil disturbance. And in talking to legal, we really couldn't figure out how you would make the nexus that the bar owner or the restaurant owner would have not stopped that, or that it probably was having to do with over-service anyway, and we'd really deal with it as an over-service charge to the purveyor, rather than a citizen gets unruly and now we suspend your outdoor seating permit. So we just removed that language and felt like there were already enough things in place, to handle those citizen issues that maybe wouldn't have to do with the restaurant or eating establishment. We did include the stakeholders in this. It was a very speedy process. Normally, we probably would have worked a little bit longer on this, but felt like they were really some pretty straightforward items we were bringing forward to you. But we did send it to all the permit holders and the Downtown Association, and we only received one comment back. And I think that person just misunderstood that maybe we were developing a new section or a new code, and stated that he felt it was a knee-jerk reaction to what was going on downtown. But when we sent out the renewal letters this year, we did send everybody a copy of the existing policy. So they do have that information. Currently, we have issued 27 permits for the season, and that's about the average. So tonight, we're just looking at next steps. You can have some dialogue of whether this policy is what the current council wants it to be. If you have some verbiage changes, or if you're accepting of these amendments, we can move forward with adoption of that resolution. And I just wanted to note that we have reserved a date for the annual bar owners meeting. We usually start with the downtown bar owners, and that is more than just the downtown. We kind of go up 4th Street and include Capone's, and we go down East Sherman and include the Hogfish, and bring them all in and kind of review what happens during special events, what's the expectation for outdoor seating. And this year, we have the police department and ISP going to be doing some presentation on some of the things that are going on currently. So I stand for questions.
Questions for Renata? Woody?
Just a quick one. So this is all related to any seating that's on public property?
Yes.
Has nothing to do with their own private space?
Correct.
They build a patio or anything like that?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Well, there are some areas that maybe they built a patio, but they didn't pay their sewer fees.
Sure.
So for restaurants, sewer fees are based on seats.
Gotcha.
So they still may have to come in and pay that additional fee for the temporary seating, but this is that for the city-owned properties.
Thank you.
Questions? Christine?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Renata, page 2, section 6, I just thought that requirement for the liability insurance was kind of low. Is that just a carryover from many, many years?
Yeah, I think is it $500,000 in the policy. The Idaho State Code for normal construction projects, things like that, is set at $500,000. But we can certainly increase that, right, Mike?
That's our tort claim liability, typically for negligence actions is $500,000. Then we have insurance above that, but there's nothing that we could require or any amount we
Well,
would be prudent.
If that's your advice, we would take it. I just thought it seemed low.
Well, I think we do, Bill's not here, but I think we've done some park things with $1 million contract, so it kind of depends on what the risk is or what council feels comfortable with. But our limit, if we're sued, is $500,000 typically for negligence, and we have ICRIMP insurance above that, so.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Renata, how would that affect, because you said there are 27 people that have turned in all of their paperwork, and in that paperwork also includes the $500,000.
Yeah, I would say they're permitted under the existing code, so this would be for next year.
Yeah, so if there were
to
any
change the
changes,
insurance.
we'd make it for next year.
Great, thank you.
Dan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Renata, why not a beer garden?
That was what the council's recommendation was at the time. So in reading the minutes from the prior meetings, it appeared because of some of the complaints they were hearing from citizens in the neighborhood, that was the desire at the council. So there's nothing that says you can't add it back in.
So they have these things, they're outdoor seating. You don't want a beer garden, but yet if it's a restaurant and all the people who are sitting outside are just drinking wine or having a beer, that's okay.
That's what the policy allows for.
Seems like a real big hole. A lot of this is a reaction to what council was told is over-serving. So when the over-serving takes place, what is the mechanism that this policy enacts to make you guys react to it?
So this policy allows for a suspension of their license for any violation of any of the city, state, or federal codes. We have never taken action through the outdoor seating policy for over-service. We've had issues with people putting out extra seats or people refusing to close the doors and remove the seats at 11 p.m. Those are the things we've traditionally had in the past that were issues. But again, this was in 2012 and 14. Council added in that suspension language based on whatever was going on at that time. It's prior to my time, but I assume it's similarly to what's happening now. So now what I would assume is we are having so many reports that come through that are being sent to ISP for possible actions of over-service. We could, if council wanted us to continue to take strict guidance of the policy, send those letters of warning first. It's a progressive disciplinary process to let the establishments know there's been police reporting of 1, 2, or 3 times of over-service from your establishment on these dates, and that could cause you to have a suspension of your license or your encroachment permit of use of city property. And the warning letter has a requirement that they provide us with an action plan on how they're going to cure that problem. So it gives them an opportunity to say, we'll provide staff with education, we'll make them do the ISP course, or whatever it is.
Don't you think it would be a lot wiser to enact that kind of restriction upon conviction as opposed to just the issuance of an over-serving warning?
I mean, it could be. It's up to council's desire of how they want to handle that. I think with those
Then
over-service.
how does that happen then? So it's
Well, the
council's
council can
desire.
change the policy to not allow suspension based on over-service of alcohol. I mean, you can set the guidelines however you would like for suspension possibilities. What happens with over-service is there's not always a criminal charge or a ticket or a conviction. That goes to Idaho State Patrol, which is part of that Alcohol Beverage Control Commission, and they decide whether they're going to do a violation against that company and do fines or suspension of their alcohol license for several days or whatever. It's their administrative process we have no control over. We have control over use of our sidewalks, so it gives the city an option to do something, but we don't have control over the ISP and ABC alcohol beverage control process.
I know. Where's that in this code that it would say that? In the denial section E?
It would be under all that suspension language. There's suspension language that says it would be based on violation of any code. I'm not sure of the exact verbiage, but.
Yeah, the thing, one of the issues I have with that is that, we've had the bars downtown for I've talked to 2 owners, and they tell me that for 10 years they've had no tickets or warnings issued for over-service, and suddenly in the last 4 months they've had a bunch. So, I'm curious as to whether this is kind of a way to get back at them, or if there's pressure being put on them by the city for some reason. I don't know why. This seems to follow that kind of pattern. I just don't see why, suddenly there's a change. I know Washington and COVID, all that stuff, we can talk about all that stuff. But normally, in a normal year, this has not been an issue. And suddenly now it's an issue. And I've also have to question all these the over-service tickets. I don't think they hold water because there's no victim named. Can you have a crime like that if there's no victim named, no time? Seems kind of arbitrary and kind of just a way to needle these guys, as opposed to anything really solid that we could rely upon as, yeah, this is legitimate. I know the chief said, yeah, people are blowing real high alcohol, and I don't doubt that this goes on. It's just, it seems to me this is kind of a pickle that we're trying to solve when there are other agencies in the state that are better equipped to do that job. That's just a comment, and I know that we could modify the language here. I'm just a little concerned about government overreach, that's all.
Yeah, and I should clarify really fast that, there are several silos here, and you have a law enforcement silo that's handling the enforcement of those codes, and then municipal services is pretty siloed into this outdoor seating policy portion. We're not in charge of that other segment of the law.
Christie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, Dan, it probably shouldn't surprise you that I might not see it the same way, come from a different background. I guess I would ask the meaning, get back at them? Like the city? You mean the city trying to get back at people? and then that this is following a pattern. I'm not on board with that, Dan. Your comments are your comments. I'm just not on board with that. What I would suggest that these seating arrangements, and clearly it's long before my time too, but it's a privilege that's granted by the city. It's not a right. Seems like we should have language in here that can revoke the privilege for this kind of behavior. We came together a few months ago as a council, and we're very strong supporting the police department that we have to address these issues in the downtown area before they're out of our control, before we become one of the cities that it's too late. And I think for all of us, our goal is for people to come downtown, enjoy the downtown, that's everybody, and everybody goes home safe. We don't put citizen safety in jeopardy. We're going to focus on that first. So I don't think we've picked on any bars. I think there's probably a few bars saying that, but I know for certain that I haven't picked on anybody. We ask them to comply with state laws and city ordinances. That's just regular business. So I don't think we have anything to apologize for asking them to comply with state law and city ordinance.
Other council questions for Renata? Woody, you got something?
Just a little history, because back in 2006, when this was, you couldn't drink in the parks, you couldn't party in the parks with alcohol. I mean, things were pretty conservative in those days. I happened to be around when this came forward, and it seemed like kind of a stretch. But the idea was you're using public property to make money on it. And the deal was food would support the beverage. It wasn't an idea of everybody's a bar. Now, in 2006, there weren't 27 people doing this. There was a very few. And that was the rules to kind of keep things under control so it wouldn't get out of hand. Now, since then, you can do things in the parks, you can have affairs, you can do beer gardens and things, and you get permits and you have certain rules. You can't walk around with it. So this has evolved a long time, and I think our values haven't changed so much. It's just, I think maybe the time has changed to where it's, people want to let loose a little bit more. So that's why I think the rules are fair, and I don't think we're asking too much, you know, considering 27 of these folks do this pretty regularly and trying to abide by the rules. I mean, we're here to help people be successful, not take things away. At least that's, I think that was the initial intent here, was to try and help the businesses, help downtown, and it applies everywhere, right?
So it's good to have somebody that could go all the way back to 2006, right?
I tell you.
Iki.
I tend to agree with the phrase that this is a privilege. It's not a right to use the sidewalk for additional space for their business. And I think it's a tremendous benefit to our visitors and to citizens who want to go enjoy a meal. But the name of the permit was not an outdoor seating, but an outdoor eating facility encroachment permit. That's what this whole thing is geared around. And so my thinking too, why not a beer garden? Well, that was never the intent. It was the intent for the enjoyment of everyone and the enjoyment of a tourist town. So I do think it's a privilege, and I do think that our law enforcement came to us with some serious issues with escalating incidents reports and escalating calls into some of these establishments. So I think it's with anything like that. If you have a privilege that you can say, you know, if you violate the rules of the game, you get privileges taken away. That's just the way life goes. And I think that that's the only change as far as cleaning up language within this code. But that's really the only change, was that you can get your privilege revoked, is what has come forward to us. And I think that law enforcement asked us for us, the community asked us for it, and I think it's important to view it that way.
Any other questions for Renata? If there are any questions, we'll be looking for council action.
I would make a motion. I have to get all the way back to my, give me a second. I don't have it in front of me. Poor timing on my part. Thank you. Okay. Yes, paper works better. I would make a motion, Mr. Mayor, to approve the amendments to the city's food and/or alcoholic beverage service area on public sidewalks policy.
Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion? Dan?
Yeah, so just a clerical point, that is Resolution 21024.
Thank you.
Sure. So, to me, this seems like we're punishing a business for the action of their customers. I know there's probably a dynamic there that I'm not aware of because, I talked to some bartenders today and some owners of businesses, and they all seem extremely sincere about trying to solve the problem of over-serving. It's something that they have to deal with. They're reaching out to the state for some more help because the language in the statutes is really vague. Doesn't really define what over-serving is. There's the blood alcohol test, but you have people who've been bottled up because of the government overreach with COVID, and they're depressed, and so they're out drinking. They show up drunk. Is that over-serving? When you go in and you have one beer and you're already drunk, they sneak alcohol into the bars and they drink in the bathrooms. Have you ever been into one of those bars on a weekend and you go into the bathrooms? There's a booze in the trash, and we're holding the bar owners responsible for that. I think that's to me that's sad because I don't view it as being pro-business. I think we should be open and accommodating to all businesses. Tell the public that we are all pro-business here and pro-downtown, and have a variety of things for people to do, including having a beer garden. That would be what I would prefer. I also think it would have been polite to at least invite some of the owners, say of the Iron Horse, Moose, Mick and Max, and Beacon, just to be here to maybe offer their opinion and their side. Just a thought.
Kiki?
Just a couple other thoughts, and maybe I wasn't clear on this. I don't think this is just about over-service. My understanding is that there's been a lot of incidents downtown, and I don't want to harm these bar owners, and I understand that people want to come and enjoy our downtown, but we have a responsibility to get some sort of containment on the things that aren't healthy before we have a huge influx of visitors come here. And so I don't think this was just about punishing them for over-service. I think that it's also a message to their patrons that if they're going to behave in an illegal fashion, they're going to cause damage to, their favorite watering hole. So I think that there's no easy answer on how to solve this, but there has to be some action taken, and that's the way I'm viewing this.
All right, any other further discussion? Woody?
Another historical perspective here. I've been here since the 70s, worked in most of the bars that were here, Iron Horse back in the day, the Resort, all the places, first disco in town. And let me tell you, when you had a liquor license, it was it was like the perfect storm. First off, you don't buy a liquor license, you stood on a list to get it. And then you energize it, you make it go. Those things were sacred. They were sacred. They were like the golden cow, because when you're done with it, it cashes you out. So there was responsibility that went along with a hard liquor license. It was everywhere I worked. It was the rules. You didn't overserve. You kept people under control. There was some responsibility that went with that sacred cow. So I understand that it looks like that, but liquor licenses were and should still be very sacred, and you have to abide by the rules of the state, whether you agree with them or not. That's where the liquor license comes from. Put your name on a list and wait 20 years, and then your cash cow comes in. Pretty nice deal. Wish I'd have put my name on a list one time. But anyway, I think it's part of the responsibility of getting a liquor license and also now making money using it. There's a certain priority and your staff needs to be known. I mean, it was very sacred and you worked really hard to protect that investment. So again, just a different perspective. I understand where you're coming from, Dan, going, well, the rules on the state, but the state's the one that puts out the liquor license, and it's their rules and their guys, and I get it. It's frustrating, but you have to abide by the rules. That's just common courtesy, and we do support businesses because of that.
All right, Christie.
Mr. Mayor, and I'd just like to add once again that I think it's a balance, and we're all trying to find a balance. We want everyone to enjoy the downtown. The bars can be a lot of fun. Let's keep them fun and safe at the same time. And so there are rules to follow, accountability, and then it works well for everybody.
All right. Roll call, please, Renata.
McEvers,
Yes.
Gookin,
No.
English,
Yes.
Wood,
Yes.
Miller.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move for adjournment.
Second.
Motion and second to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.